When you think about the great warlords of Japanese history, one name always stands out: Takeda Shingen. He was a true military genius, a man who seemed absolutely unstoppable, on the very brink of unifying the entire nation. But his final, fateful campaign, well, that's where he was brought down not by a rival army, but by an enemy that no one could even see.
My death must not be announced. Keep silence for 3 years. Those were his last words. Pretty strange, right? For a leader who's about to achieve total victory. So why all the secrecy? To really get why he gave such a desperate final order, we have to go back to the beginning of the end.
All right, so picture this. It's 1570. Takeda Shingen, known as the Tiger of Kai, is at the absolute height of his power. He's a master of the mountains, he's crushed his rivals, and his army is seen as this unstoppable force. They are feared all across Japan. And Shingen has his eyes on one ultimate goal: to march on the imperial capital, Kyoto. Now, this wasn't just about conquering another city. No, this was about seizing the ultimate prize, the title of shogun, which would give him the power to finally unify Japan under his rule. But, the road to Kyoto wasn't exactly a straight shot. There were two huge obstacles standing in his way. First, you had the Imagawa clan, who controlled this really crucial coastal province called Suruga. And second, there was this powerful new alliance forming between two rising stars, Tokugawa Ieyasu and the brilliant, totally ruthless Oda Nobunaga. So, with his targets set and his enemies identified, Shingen launched his final campaign. And at first, it was just an overwhelming, terrifying success for anyone who dared to stand against him. And this campaign started with just insane speed. In 1568, he rolls into Suruga and completely shatters the Imagawa clan. By late 1572, he's going after his main rivals. At the Battle of Mikatagahara, Shingen's forces absolutely crushed Tokugawa Ieyasu's army, handing him one of the most humiliating defeats of his entire life. But what happens next is it's pure psychological warfare. The defeated Tokugawa flees back to his castle, but instead of locking the doors, he throws them wide open and lights every single torch. Shingen's commanders see this and immediately think it's a trap, so they halt their advance. It was a total bluff, and it worked. But still, the road to Kyoto was now wide open. So, with his greatest rivals on the run and the path to the capital basically clear, it really seemed like nothing could stop Takeda Shingen. But the most dangerous enemy wasn't on any battlefield. It was already inside his own body. Seriously, think about it. What could possibly stop him at this point? Oda Nobunaga was scrambling his forces, but even he was terrified of a direct fight. Shingen's army was this disciplined, ferocious war machine. Who could possibly defeat the tiger at the very gates of his ultimate victory? To the rest of the world, he was totally invincible. His enemies feared him, his soldiers loved him, and he just seemed unstoppable. He was the perfect image of a conqueror. But behind the scenes, a very different battle was being fought. As his army marched forward, Shingen himself was wasting away. He was hiding this terrible illness, some historians think it was tuberculosis, that caused constant suffering. He'd hide his body's tremors under these heavy cloaks, but his closest generals, they knew the truth. The tiger was dying. But here's the thing about Takeda Shingen. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a master strategist. And even in his final moments, he planned one last move, a gambit that would actually use his own death as a weapon. So in the spring of 1573, he gathers his most trusted commanders. His final plan was crystal clear and just brilliant: stop the advance and hide his death for 3 full years. He absolutely knew his enemies would attack the second they sensed any weakness. The fear of the living taiga was his clan's greatest defense, and he was going to make sure that fear lasted from beyond the grave. And you know what? For 3 years, the trick worked. The world really believed the tiger was still out there, watching from the shadows. But a strategy like that just can't last forever. And what came next was the tragic and incredibly fast collapse of his mighty clan. Command fell to his son, Takeda Katsuyori. Now, he was a brave guy, but he just didn't have his father's strategic genius. He inherited this incredibly powerful army, but he also inherited an impossible legacy. And the unity his father had built started to crack. The final blow came in 1575 at the Battle of Nagashino, and this image really shows you why.
Katsuyori, trying to prove he was his father's son, launched a classic Takeda cavalry charge. But warfare was changing. The Oda and Tokugawa forces met them not with spears, but with lines of soldiers armed with arquebuses, these early firearms. The legendary Takeda cavalry was just decimated. It was so much more than a defeat, it was the end of an entire era for the samurai.
In less than 10 years, just 10 years after that single loss, the Takeda clan, once the most feared name in all of Japan, was completely wiped from the map.
But here's the amazing thing. While his clan disappeared, Takeda Shingen's story was far from over. His legend just grew and grew, outliving the very empire he had tried to build.
You want to know the greatest testament to his impact? It comes from his biggest rival, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the very man Shingen had humiliated at Mikitagahara. Ieyasu, who would go on to actually unify Japan, modeled his own military on the Takeda army, even admitting their discipline was unsurpassed. Centuries later, when Japan was building its modern identity, leaders looked to the past to find national heroes. Shingen was held up as this model of military virtue, and his tactical genius earned him a brand new title in the popular imagination, the Napoleon of Japan. So in the end, Takeda Shingen never made it to Kyoto. He never became shogun. But his name echoes through history way louder than many of the people who did. Which leaves us with a final question, doesn't it? Is a leader measured by the victories they actually achieve or by the legend they leave behind?